What did the five fingers say to the face? What? Slap!
Now, how many times would I have to do that to you until you finally came to the realization and understanding that I am not looking out for your best interest?
If, in fact, a calculation comes to you that you are satisfied with, would you then say, I'm for reparations?
The answer is it would depend on what it was and will it include Native Americans as well.
So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people. No.
Why not target the African American community? Why not say then, this is for you? This is for African Americans. If there was a banking crisis, then you target money for the banks. If there was a national disaster, you target your money for the national for disaster relief.
That's not how America works.
Now, many of you all call me sellout, but I know if I had an audience with the president and I had got that president elected, I would be placing demands on that president. But I would have placed my demands before I actually cast my vote. But in this position right here, I would be asking, because after you cast your vote, you are in the asking position. I would be asking the president for the same things that Native Americans have. I would be asking for land. I'd be asking for a check every month. I'd be asking to be able to go to college for free. I'd be asking for housing. I'd be asking for things that were tangible for my people. Honestly, I'd be asking for land, and I'd be asking for gold, and I'd be asking for free medical. I'd be asking for everything. But that's me. That's the sellout. But let's listen to the conscious, woke, pro-black leadership that we have leading us to the promised land.
I mean what I say when I say it.
I want to ask that you consider issuing an executive order to create a national task force to examine challenges to our democracy, a national voter access commission.
It's going to be important, for example, that one of your first actions is a reversal of the executive order that President Trump promulgated that essentially seeks to gag conversations about diversity, race, and history among anyone who contracts with the federal government.
So wait a minute, nobody's asking for land?
And so we would ask you to lend your voice and your strength and your influence and your power and your ability to reach across the aisle to try and pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. But failing that, we would ask you to pull from that act measures that can be enacted by executive order. You have the power to call for a national database on police misconduct. You have the power to ask for a registry that will allow people to easily search in public multiple misconduct complaints against particular officers. You have the ability to impose a database around police killings and police shootings. And these are things that you can do by executive order.
Wait a minute. Nobody brought up even being tax exempt, even free education.
We don't care about throwing fists in the air and the symbols. We want the substance. The Joe Biden I've known is substance. The Kamala Harris I've known is substance. We need it now more than ever. And I would hope that on the first day you start doing the things with your executive orders to restore some dignity to law enforcement in our community and to voting.
Wait a minute. Nobody brought up land, gold, a check every month, free education, free medical. Nobody brought up any of those things? Why is everything they're asking for dealing with the police? The things that black people need are economic. If racism is an economic issue, then why is all the emphasis to fight racism placed on the criminal justice system?
But as much as it is our fault for being stubborn, it's more so the fault of weak-minded black leadership that has arisen post-civil rights movement. You see, after the civil rights movement passed and all the dust cleared and settled, what was left over after all of the assassinations and false imprisonments were the cowards of the civil rights movement. Those who were ready and willing to sell black Americans short for their own personal gain. And the weak-minded mentality that has carried over from the end of the civil rights movement up until this very moment is still prevalent to this very day. This is why from 1964 to the present day, there has been no real progress where it matters the most concerning the racial wealth gap. Instead, what we've received year after year is symbolism by way of so-called black leaders receiving token positions within government, making excuses for why nothing gets done.
You see, white liberals convince us that the way to fight racism is from a social level, but that's ridiculous because racism is an economic issue. So these people are asking for things that we actually don't need, because the biggest problem in the black community is poverty. I'm glad we were able to see our illustrious, conscious, woke black leaders that care about us so much. I'm glad we were able to hear our non-sellout leaders talk to Joe Biden and literally beg him to be taken on a date to Applebee's, and they will be excited to get the 2 for $20. Do you hear these people begging? Do you hear these people begging Joe Biden for crumbs? I mean, literally begging Joe Biden for a 2-piece and a biscuit. I'm talking about a thigh and a leg and a biscuit. That's it. I'm talking about a thigh and a leg and a Popeye's biscuit with no drink.
Joe Biden, you need to watch your tone. You need to watch your tone. Kamala Harris needs to pull Joe Biden aside. Joe, you might want to watch your tone. Joe Biden, and he did during the debate, and he did it here, where I did this and I did that, I did this and I did that. That was last week. Now, first of all, let's be real clear. That works fine in a debate because you're trying to establish what I've done. The reality is this for black folks. Joe, what you've done the last 47 years is irrelevant to where we are today. It's what you're going to do the next 4 years that's going to matter. And I got no problem saying it.
They are literally begging for gift cards. Not even gift cards, postcards. Because everything they're talking about is symbolic and it won't actually do anything for black people. Because the things that black people need extend way beyond dealing with the police, because most black people don't deal with the police. But again, there is no such thing as black leadership. So black leadership is not allowed to say anything or ask for anything that's going to actually benefit and empower black people. So even though I've been called a sellout, clearly you can listen to this audio and tell who the real sellouts are. They're not asking for anything that's going to benefit the black community on a whole, because they're not talking about financially empowering black people. And again, keep in mind, none of these other groups spend money with the black community. And remember, solidarity between the races is expressed through economics. So for example, black people in this country spend money with every other racial group. None of these other groups spend money with the black community. So when the Hispanics reach the top in the United States with our help, they will have no alliance or allegiance with us. White liberals and our black leaders will convince us to march and protest, riot and fight for Hispanics and immigrants and the LGBTQP, don't forget X, Y, and Z community. And our reward will be to watch them get what we deserve. But I'm glad you all got to hear what begging sounds like. I'm glad you all got to hear what it sounds like when you give someone your vote knowing you aren't going to get anything in return. This is how you sound. You cannot make demands. You must only beg for the crumbs. With the Hispanics and the immigrants in this country, they don't need black people. They don't need the black vote. They won't need the black dollar. And I will say it again, we let a golden opportunity slip by.
This man was asked a very direct question about holding Joe Biden accountable for taking the black vote for granted, and he literally changed the subject to environmental justice. This is the kind of black leadership that we've been under since 1964. So if you're wondering why nothing ever gets done, here you go. And this is also the reason why the Democratic Party in large takes the black community and as well as our so-called leaders as a joke, because they are so quick to sell us out for token positioning.
What I've concluded from analysis is that there are going to be a converging of social factors nationally and internationally that's going to place blacks in a permanent status of underclasship. And one, we anticipate by that point in time, based on all the research that's coming to us, that the next generation of whites is going to be more anti-black than they've been since the Civil Rights Movement. Two, we anticipate by the same token about 86 million Hispanics coming into the United States and about 41 million Asians by that point in time, which is going to kick black folk out of being the minority in the society down to a minority. We've been number 2 in the society for 400 years as a group.